For those of you who know Khoj, ever since we came here in 2002, we came to Khoj in 2000, the building here in Khirki in 2002, we were the outsiders and we felt we really had to create some sense of trust within this community. And so with several young artists, we did murals, shop makeovers. We even worked the mandir in front with a lovely little sculpture, which people began to use and do perambulations around it. Then as our residency roster began, many artists came and made small and big interventions within Khirki. We had Bambang Toto and several others, Reza, from Ruangrupa, who came in 2006, 5, 4, many years ago, and worked with smaller, with different parts of this community. We also learned over a period of time by just being here, we began to understand and unpack what Khirki meant and its shifting population. We spoke to Masterji, who is the oldest living inhabitant here, and he told us how what is now this manicured lawn in front was a Jamun Bagh, and how the malls that we see there were actually beautiful orchards of nimbus, of lime. And how it had all changed over the years. And several of the artists who've been to Khoj have kind of unpacked that. In 2013, Somnath Bharti, so many of you over here, one of the MLAs in India, in Delhi, he attacked 2 Ugandan women. And that was a time when Khirki had a huge population, influx of African community here. We've always seen a very shifting community here, from local migrants to others. Today we have the largest population of Afghan migrants here and refugees here. But at that time there was a huge African community, and when this horrific accusation happened down the road, in fact, we had to step back and say, okay, what could we do that also makes sense inside the studio but also outside? And we started 3 very we believe, meaningful projects, one of which resulted in Khirki Voice, which has been happening for the last 4 years, 5 years here. One of our curators, Radha, worked with a designer and came out with a beautiful graphic novel after interviewing a Somalian refugee woman for almost a year regularly, which was about refugees, and the UNHCR actually invited us to reproduce and reprint that novel. And so we also started a residency program trying to understand our relationship between India and different countries in Africa. So from what social practice was, which was very peripheral to Khoj, being only in Khirki, it has now become, as you will see from the exhibition downstairs in the last 4 or 5 years that we've been supporting artists with this kind of practice, has become pretty much a mainstream of inquiry for us. Why? Well, COVID, the last few years, also the socio-political situation over the last 7, 8 years, made us introspect, and we had to ask ourselves some very tough questions of what an organization like Khoj actually needed to do at a time like this. And I think it seemed important to initiate very small projects, but meaningful projects in different peripheral parts of India, where some of them spoke to power, perhaps, but were not in the limelight of Delhi. And it is something that we feel we need to continue to do around various thematics, but really support artists working and building ecosystems in different parts of India, which are more peri-urban and not only in the big cities. So despite Khoj, all of this has happened. We've got this exhibition up. And then one of the questions that came up, having supported artists for a year doing these long-term projects, was all the various challenges of turning process, documentation into an artifact, or is it an artifact at all, or how do you even showcase that? I mean, these were one of the many questions, and I'm sure there'll be different kinds of questions when we talk about this kind of practice. So over to Jeebesh and Mirwan. But before that, may I please give a brief introduction? Brief. Okay. So Mirwan Andan was born and raised in Watampur. He graduated from comparative politics in universities of Indonesia, Depok, Jakarta. And he moved to Jakarta and joined Ruangrupa in 2006. His book editorial works include 20 Kul Dasak, Networking, Rebelling, Maneuvering, Moving, And he participated in several events, including independent creative art spaces, leadership training, etc., etc. But really interestingly, from 2016 to 2018, he worked as the advisor for the General Director of Culture, Ministry of Education and Culture, Republic of Indonesia. And since 2014, he has begun to commute from Makassar to Jakarta for family matters and to organize a new initiative. And in 2018, with his fellow researchers and cultural activists, he founded Riwanua, not ruangrupa, Riwanua, a project initiative based in Makassar. And from early 2019, of course, he's been with ruangrupa. He's part of the artistic team of the Documenta 15 that took place in Kassel, Germany. Jeebesh, I think everyone knows here. But I will still, for those who don't, I'd like to just say, along with Monica and Shraddha, formed Raqs Media Collective in 1992 in Delhi, India, 1992. Raqs enlists objects such as early modern tiger automata from South India, or a biscuit from the Paris Commune, or a cup salvaged from an ancient Mediterranean shipwreck, to turn them into devices to sniff and taste time. I'm enjoying reading this. Devices are deployed, thus, in order to undertake historical subterfuge and philosophical queries. Raqs practices across several media, making installations, sculpture, video, performance, text, lexica, and curation. In 2001, they founded the Sarai program at CSDS and ran it for a decade, where they also edited the Sarai Reader series, which many of us have kept and hung on to very desperately. They were the artistic directors for the recently concluded Yokohama Triennale 2020 Afterglow, where they developed sources around toxicity, care, and the luminosity of friendship. Well, thank you so much, and really welcome you both for this conversation.
I think in the context of Documenta 15, what ruangrupa over the last 4 years has created, done, argued, created, we need to comprehend it in its many dimensions. It's a long work, it's work with many dimensions. What I will try to do is mark 3-4 points, which I call brackets, by which we can probably bring in some kind of focus to the sprawling series of discussions and practices that are opened up. Just to begin with, this idea of the social practice, when initially I was about 15-20 years back, started work on intellectual property, if I asked the word, say, intellectual to anyone, they would say, no, I'm not an intellectual. But if you say property, there are property lists, I don't have property, my parents have property, properties this, properties that, there are many books on property. But if you say intellectual property, everybody would get it. Everybody seems to have intellectual property. So there is this kind of, what happened was that very difficult terms of historically complicated histories become suddenly falls into the lap as if everybody is a bearer of it. The same way, the social practice has made everybody bearer of some kind of relationship to the world of art and world of general life practices, because the word social, and after the last 30 years attack on it, it stands very tattered on its own. Because there is at its core, there is a lot of anti-social performing the social, and that social is a very dismembered kind of category. And same is the word practice. It has pulled in many, many layers to it. So in the general, given that it is a kind of a personalized space, the word social practice, every artist can spin a social practice. Everybody can have a commentary or an entry point to social practice. So this Documenta does, my question to start with, is it a general case that ruangrupa is making, or there is something very specific that ruangrupa does to the category of the social practice which they have been laden with, that they are supposed to be carrying. Now, to me, looking at the Documenta, looking at all the discourse that has come up with it, I place 3 arguments that what they achieved. One is the infrastructural question. Now, what they did, and that anybody in the popular media you would understand, that they changed the term invitation and made invitation an extensive act. So in this Documenta, one popular usage is there are 1,500 artists. Now, obviously, ruangrupa has not invited 1,500 artists. What it does is that it creates an extensive infrastructural claim where 1,500 could emerge as artists and in the site. Now, this is not a easy gambit. You think of an infrastructure of an institution giving 1,500 visas, 1,500 people staying, 1,500 ways of living, you know. So what they do is they change the infrastructural question that this event like Documenta, which will have its bearing on events like biennales, on all institutions, by that reanimating the term invitation. So because, you know, if you ask any artist, they will use the word, I have been invited to a biennale or to somewhere, or to any institution or a residency, but they will always, the other claim would be, I have been selected. So what they have done is that's a kind of meritocratic language within which the circulation of artists happens in the world. They have displaced it by making the invitation a new site. And the invitation changes two currencies. What it does is it changes the language by which host has to receive. So the host is not receiving 100 artists. Host is receiving 1,500 artists. So the language of the exhibition cannot be through the language by which a certain determination of what is being seen can be narrated so easily, because it's a growing edifice. So this infrastructural transformation makes the Documenta an unfamiliar space. You know, what this unfamiliarity is what we need to understand when we are continuously trying to think what happened. Like I heard stories from India, some people from India with a certain disposition to a mythological way of looking at exhibitions said that, oh, koi art hi nahi hai. But that's the fundamental error of looking. Before looking, the image has fallen on the front. So this is first point. The second point is that much more fundamental related to this point is the question of the value. Now they change the value terms. What is the value term? What they do is that how you are located in the world today is something I am going to discuss. So art making is not what you bring for me to view. Art making is to discuss how you stand in the world today. And now this is something that positions a very interesting contest between majoritarian and minoritarian ways of assembling oneself in spaces. So the normative, like Vidya was a few minutes back saying, the normative framework of being in a space, which we continuously discuss these days, is something that they kind of took and thammed it. And they unpacked it and unraveled it. And you know, Andan and we used to share with some friends there a WhatsApp group for 3-4 years, yeah, which he generously named rereading. Because he started the whole Documenta journey with rereading. He was rereading everything. But when the Documenta started happening, it all became So it became the whole thing unraveled. So the unraveling was because the value questions was unraveled. So the art historical value question, the question of how you locate yourself in an exhibition with a multiplicity of people who do not claim the same site. You know, do not have the same disposition to your site. So the value question, and you know, in India also, you know, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, this value question is very central to the political debate in the various minoritarian ways in our society, dispositional questions. How do you live equality? How do you live various forms of privileges and counter them? You know, this value question is at the heart of the new political. So they made it as the heart of the way art making has to be done. So it is not what you don't see art, but you see a struggle with the value question. And the third question that I think is very central to understanding, and that is where specifically ruangrupas being from Indonesia and a certain cultural and intellectual and political history of Indonesia matters, is the art as placemaking. You know, in many small ways, many people in the world keeps on trying that. And I mean placemaking is where the art brings into the play many diversities of positions, plays, and very different minoritarian histories into play, very different minor histories into play together. Without the burden that this translation, there will be an extra X that will translate an Archimedean point, translate into each other. The translation is the dynamics of the placemaking. And that ability, that confidence, I think in Ruangrupa's case, comes from Indonesia in last 20-25 years, which is after the anti-militarist movement, search for democracy, creation of so many different cultures, and different kind of educational and cultural backgrounds playing and talking to each other in an unprecedented way, in a completely unprecedented way. And that ability, that confidence in placemaking, that placemaking is where minoritarian views will tussle with each other. And so it needs duration, and it needs a way of being with each other in that duration, and with disagreement, with the fallouts could be very troubling, but the idea was that it is something that is possible. These are the three. So I met one student in Jogja who was a part of the good school in Frederikshanum. Huh? So Frederikshanum is this building in Kassel, which is a building of buildings. It's a historical art space, like you see it, you show in Frederikshanum, you put it in your banner, like that. What they did was incredible. They made a children's playground, that is fine, that's still within the normative structure of the care economy of West. But what they did, they created a good school and a dormitory, a unisex dormitory of boys and girls and young people, with sharing and living there, with washing and cleaning in Frederikshanum. And I kept on thinking if possibly any other people would have been able to do it. And it was running for 100 days with a good kitchen as the background. So what they did was they changed the idea of rethink what are these spaces for, and what does the artistic body means today. And that radical transformation of value, infrastructure, as well as placemaking comes together in a very, very intriguing way in our new staging that has come to us. So for us now, start doing art after document 15 is as potent, as important. The discussions in universities or in art space will be as important as probably it was in 2002. In Delhi, there was 3 discussion documenta, 2002, 2012, because it was tied with Kochi Biennale, and now. So it already shows a graph that some degrees of transformation is happening, and this kind of movement.
So thank you, Jeebesh. I think that you already said everything. And also, first of all, thank you so much for Coach Puja and the team for inviting us to be here to converse. I hope I'm not going to be one direction, but anyone can just jump in while I'm talking, and then let's converse in this lovely afternoon. For me, myself, this is the first visit to India. Actually, we made a plan in early 2020 to come for like 1 month to meet friends, to meet some people, and also to hang out, of course, as part of the research for the preparation of Documenta 15, but COVID-19 came and then we didn't make it. And also thank you so much for all of you who are here today to converse with us. And also I'm not going really to try to answer Jeebesh questions and points, but maybe to respond what he said earlier. Maybe some of you already also listened to what I will going to speak about. But for me, that it's fine to repeat it every time, over and over, because of the sharing resources doesn't only take one time, but it needs to be taken many times, so it can really happening to sustain together. So I want to start with the story of how we actually engage with Documenta 15 as the artistic director. Is that by the end of I think it was November or somewhere November, and an email came to us in our inbox at info@ruangrupa.org, and then asking that are we interested to send an expression of interest to Documenta 15 to be the artistic director. So at the same time, it was also an invitation for us to send an expression of interest. But then we answered the invitation by inviting back Documenta. So we sent an invitation back to Documenta and saying that are you interested to work on a practice called lumbung? Here we invite you back. If you are interested, let's do it. And then that's how they answered the email, and then they took the invitation, and then they sent us email again, and that's how also we sent like a short. We don't call it a proposal, but we call it the storytelling of what lumbung is, how we wanna do it, how we wanna do it, and then how it's actually lumbung is not a theme. It's not a theme, but it's a practice. It's not like a word that we try to find while sitting alone and try to find an inspiration. But we've been living with it. We've been practicing it for many years, and then that's also the reason why we can sustain as a group of people who are interested to do art and cultural practices. Later we call it collective. In the first place, when it was started in 2000, ruangrupa was called as an initiative, but then the word collective started to use soon after that. So yeah, and then we answered the invitation by inviting back Documenta, and they said yes, and then we went through some process, interviews, and also by the end of the day of the interview, we were asking again, come to one place, and the people who interviewed us asking that, what about if you are selected to be the artistic director Documenta? And then we answered that depends on when you tell us. If you tell us now, maybe we'll take it. If you don't tell us now, because there's a plane to catch and then we need to go to the airport soon, maybe we're not going to do it. But if you tell us now, maybe we'll take it. And then they said that, okay, you're selected. And they, okay, deal, we take it. And that's how the story started. And soon after that, we started to visit Kassel as a city. The fact is that 9 of us in ruangrupa who are working for Documenta 15 as the artistic director, only one of us ever been in Documenta. It was Farid Rakun. He was in Cranbrook School of Visual Art in Detroit, and then there was an excursion, and then he was brought by his university to be in Kassel, but to see Documenta, the one with the Bagar cave, I think. 13, yeah. But the rest of us, 8 of us, never been to Documenta. We knew what Documenta was. We knew what Documenta is. It's happening in Kassel. It's part of a mega event in Germany. Some people say that it's one of the most prestigious art event. We knew it. We knew it is part of the history. But none of us ever been there except Farid. So this is also applied to Indonesian. Many people, they don't know what Documenta is. I think we discussed this earlier, that there are some similarities with Indonesia and India, that not many people know Documenta, especially people who are not really have a high mobility in the art scene in the global world. So yeah, when we were selected, and then we started to visit Kassel, and what we did for the first time when we came to Kassel was not soon thinking that which venues we are going to use to which building or which spaces that we are going to use as a venues, or which artists we are going to invite or to work with, or which curators we are going to work with. Or what we did was we started to hang out, to know the people on the ground, to know the people who are in the bars. We hang out a lot in the bars, getting to know with the bartenders, the street vendors who are selling merchandise on the street, the homeless people who are selling magazines, the people that we really want to hang out with, because we want to know what's going on, on the ground. The castle as a location, as a city that has a long history in the artwork, as the place where Documenta is always organized. And then also at the same time, we also really knew that when it was started in 1955, Documenta was started in 1955 in June. We also really know that in the same year, in 1955, in Indonesia, there was also something happened. So the reason from the history we learned that Arnold Bode organized Documenta 15 because the first Documenta, because he wanted to heal the wound of a city. The wound of a city that was destructed by the war. And then that's how he organized an exhibition. It was in June, but in April in the same year, Sukarno and some of leader of the world at the time, Jawaharlal Nehru also was in there. They organized a Bandung conference in April with the basic reason to heal the wound of the world. They were also distracted by the colonization. So we can see in the same year there are two events, one exhibition, one conference. Their basic reasons is to heal the wound. So one organized exhibition and one organized conference. So we really knew all of these things, and then and also that's the reason why when we started to hang out, we tried to get the feeling of the city. And then, of course, we had a plan to come here and there to meet people, not only in Kassel but also in many corners of the world, because we believe that lumbung is a platform or a practice of sharing resources in order to sustain together. It's not only exists in Indonesia. Lumbung itself is not only a term, it's not only a practice, but also it's part of. It's actually part of the collective memory of Indonesian when it comes to food sovereignty, to face the crisis, to face the tough situation. But also for us in Ruangrupa, we don't see lumbung is not only a physical structure. We don't see it only as a hardware, but we also see it as a software. We see it as a software that can be installed with its different names, with its different practices in many places. So for us, lumbung is a way of running our daily life, including in art practices. And then this is really reflecting what we've been doing in Ruangrupa, that many years we've been passing through since 2000. We can sustain because of we really practice it. And then that's the reason when you mention values, we try to indicate there are 7 values in this lumbung, which are locally anchored, because when you want to do it, then you really need to sit down and work with people who are strongly rooted in that context. That's the reason why when we came to Kassel, when we went to Kassel, we talk with the Kasselers who are strongly rooted in their context. And then the second one is transparency. Third, independence. Regeneration, sufficiency. What else? Humor. Yeah. Humor, and those 7 values that we, in order to sustain that, we try to find these values based on our practice in Ruangrupa. That also we believe that those values can be added more based on the context of the initiative or collectives that later we work with in this Documenta 15, and that's the reason why when, for example, when we when we announce the name of the artists or collectives that we work with, we already discussed with, we didn't announce it with a how to say conventional way. Conventional way here is that, yeah, because in any mega event, announcing the name of the participant of the artist is one of the most awaited one, because people who is okay, he's joining, they don't. So there is always this atmosphere. So we didn't announce it with a conventional way in a room with the lighting, with cameras shooting us, and then after that drinking beers and wine. But we announced the name of the artist by working with Street Magazine. So we found this Street Magazine earlier when we started to visit Castle by hanging out, and then we found out that there is a street magazine sold by the homeless, which the name itself, when we saw it for the first time, really poetic for us. So the name of this magazine is Asphalt, mostly sold in Kassel, Göttingen, and Hamburg, if I'm not wrong. So it's sold by the homeless, and then we came up with an idea to announce the name of the artist through this magazine. So there's no other way to know the artist rather than by this magazine. And then the money of this the selling goes to the homeless in the magazine itself. So yeah, that's also how we announce the name of the people we work with, based on the time zones, based on the time zone where they belong to. Because the reason why we announce it with the time zones, there are some reasons. The first one is that we really know and understand that there's some of the people we are going to work with, that we are going to announce, they are on the road. Today they are in Asia, but maybe tomorrow they will be in Europe. Next day they will be somewhere in Latin America. So time zones is really applied here. The second one is that most of the time when we did the research via Zooms, and then we're really struggling with the time zones. Like there was a time I was in Indonesia, and Indonesia itself, it has 3 time zones, and I'm in a central Indonesian time. There was a time that I need to sit to 5 o'clock in the morning to wait for our friends which are in Trinidad Tobago, which is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're really struggling with these time zones issues via Zoom. So that's also that's the reason why we announce in those kind of ways. And then later also, anytime we discuss with the people that we want to work with, we always say that we don't want only ruangrupa has the portfolio of this document, if it's a portfolio. So please extend the invitation. Here we invite you, but please extend the invitation. Please extend the invitation. Even though, for example, we invite an individual artist like Richard Bell, but we know that Richard Bell, he has his own ecosystem in Australian context, working with young people in many indigenous issues and so on and so on. We really understand it, and then we also emphasizing that please bring your ecosystem, and also as well as to the collective or initiative or group that also we believe that they already have their own ecosystem, and then they can bring more ecosystem. They can bring more the ecosystems through this. In fact, is that there are around 1,500 people who are part of this Documenta 15. It can be an artist, curator, or a cultural practitioner, activist, anything that are part of this. If you want to go to numbers, and there are around 1,400 public programs for 100 days, and then as you mentioned that there is actually a question on infrastructure, how it can happen. It's not always easy. It's always there are always things to solve. I don't want to really call it as problems, but let's just call it as the dynamic of the process. let's just call it the dynamic of the process, and then we need to adjust. That we need to adjust to make it, because all of us in our head that we want to get through all this process up until the end of 100 days, and then we made it. As you can see from the video that there are a crowd in front of Pridicianum. There were a mix of feelings that time. There were people came to us and then said that it's not supposed to end. But there are also some feelings that okay, finally it ends. It ends, and then Castle will be the same as before. And then they're waiting for the next document again. So, but yeah, we made it, and then we always say that what we always say is beyond documenta. So because to sustain as a human, it doesn't only need 100 days. 100 days is not enough to sustain. It doesn't need 100 days, and then it's not always enough only with exhibitions. It needs more. It needs more realistic practices to sustain, and then that's also we always say that it's going to be continued somewhere else. Where is it? It's been discussed, and then how it's going to be look like. It's also now a discussion among us, and then yeah, as you said that it's actually very open in terms of that. To see lumbung as a practice to sustain, because we believe that to sustain it's not going to be it's not going to be happen if it's only practiced by individual interest, but it's supposed to be by a collective interest. It's supposed to be brought by not only one-sided party, but it's supposed to be parties. That many people involved, many thought it's not always easy, but for many samples it works. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Who is a lumbung artist? Like you keep on saying, I heard many times, that is a very good lumbung artist. What do you mean when you? What kind of attribute? What kind of disposition you say is lumbung artist? Yeah.
What we actually call as a lumbung artist, that the artists or the cultural practitioners that we discuss many hours, of course via Zoom. Some of them we already knew, but some of them we knew from mutual friends, which are recommended by friends. But this is also interesting because of some of the people we discuss with during the process of the research. We said that. If you don't need to, you don't have to. This is an invitation, and any invitation sometimes you don't need to take it because for some specific reasons. And then yeah, that's true. There are some people that we discuss with, and they say that I think I'm already busy and I'm not going to have more time to do this. But I can recommend some names that maybe they are available to do this. What we call as a lumbung artist is that the people that we, as I said, that we've been discussing for many hours, and then we try to build a trust. We try to build the trust along the way, along the process, and the trust is built, and then because also it's not about only about we trust them, but also they trust us. The reason why we do this because we don't do a classical way of curating. So also for your information, 9 of us in ruangrupa, none of us were trained formally as a curators. Some of us went to art school, but they were not trained as like a formal curators or curating studies or things like that. Yeah, that's. The basic thing that what we call lumbung artists, that the ones that we've been building trust, we trust each other, and then we believe that we can do this, no matter how it is that the dynamic of the process come along the way. Yeah. I hope it answers.
There is more to the lumbung. You would like to come in, Vidya?
Thank you so much, Jeebesh and Andan. Yeah, I mean, I think also just to think about the question of socially engaged practice and how the exhibition, you know, what is the exhibition? And I mean, this practice itself is asking that question, that what is the exhibition within this longer process? And, you know, and I think even in our own Indian context, the scene here, I think we've been going through such a fast, accelerated way of really rethinking what the exhibition is. And of course, the documenta is, you know, is going to add and is adding a lot to that discourse. But I mean, there is still this sense of the exhibition as some sort of evidentiary outcome related, and especially when you link it with the socially engaged practice, which is coming from the development sector and the social sector, which also has the kind of pressures that it has to sort of define outcomes. And, you know, so our understanding of what it is to work with communities or in the language of activism and social practice. So, and I think, I mean, in the way that we are opening it up into so many things. One of the things that I think you had shared at one of the documenta talks was also thinking about it in terms of an experiment towards democratic process, which is, you know, and even now the way that you lay out the protocol for that, because of course, I mean, it's one thing to say this, and then it's one thing to also create those structures which are both, which allow and then are also open to whatever the outcomes may be of that. So, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of, you know, the exhibition as advocacy is another mode that we kind of think of when we think of socially engaged practices, that we must, you know, communicate this work that's happening with the community. And even an experiment in arts administration, which this whole question of infrastructure. And I was just thinking about recently talking to some people who are working in the climate change context, and you know, talking about how important financial devolution becomes in that context, that you're able to give money to the local communities who are impacted, because even though climate change is working at a global scale or a national scale, and but you know, the impact of it is happening very locally, it's and it is very unpredictable as well. So they're all kind of grappling with this question, and the way that you also structured it, in terms of, you know, 1,500 people were sort of invited through a very, of course, open process. I was just wondering how, because obviously there was a legality involved with it. It's not just as simple as you handing out money, and it's something, I think Charles Esche was talking about how when you first proposed it, you know, it was, they told you that, you know, that's not possible legally. So you also build the structures in place. But I just wanted to, maybe if you had anything to share about that whole process of the way that funds were dispersed and became collective.
Thank you so much for this question, because it really reminds me many things that I didn't mention before. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when we were interviewed, and then the International Funding Committee, actually, some of them said that it seems that you don't need an exhibition for this. But then we said, no, no, let us draw something on the whiteboard. So that's how we started to draw something, and then explain everything, and then it more feasible that it's going to be an exhibition. We said, don't worry, we know that Documenta is an exhibition event, so we're also going to do it. So the process actually is not even when we were selected, because before, as we know that it's always individual who always selected as a artistic director of Documenta, and then we knew from some friends that there was even how to say, like a doubt that is it really that you want to work with a collective to do a Documenta 15? As a collective is not only one person, but there are many. How is the nomenclature? How is the nomenclature in the legality and things? But we knew that there's one person in there say that change your nomenclature, so you can work with the collective, because of I understand that this guy who really had mind suggesting to change the nomenclature to work with the collectives really understand that it's the time to it's the time not only to work based on the individual interest, but supposed to be on a collective interest. And yeah, the process was really like coming back and forth all the time. In this is also reflecting to your question about the lumbung artist, is that after after having names around 60s, more than 60s, and then we create what we call as majlis. So majlis, there are two types of majlis. Big majlis where everyone are coming together in one Zoom, and of course we're struggling a lot with the time zones, but if most of the people they could make it. We discuss many things, issues, infrastructure, security, and so on and so on. But also we create what we call as a mini majlis. In mini majlis, I think there are around 8 or 9 mini majlises where artists or collective are put together in one mini majlis. Can be like 7 to 8 or 9 parties in there to discuss 2 years before the opening. To meet can be like once in a month to meet and to discuss anything, including to ask casual questions that what do you have for breakfast, what do you want to go, what do you want to do for dinner. But also we put seed money in there in one mini majlis, and then they can manage those seed funding to be used among them, among these mini majlis. This is also very interesting because this is also how the artists and collectives are get to know each other. Because as we know that in any events, like artists only meet during the installment, and then after that opening, toasting beer and wine, and then that's it. They get back to their own life again. But with this 2 years process, they really know each other. There are discussion, there are maybe fights, there are trust and distrust, but it works. And then that's also how to actually experimenting on the relation among the people who are part of this process. So in the mini majlis, the issues can be brought into big majlises that and this is how it lumbung works actually. If there are problems, let's discuss about it. If there are no problems, don't bring problems. Let's just enjoy the moment. And then, so yeah, I hope it answered that, because if I tell you the whole process, it takes maybe another 4 years to tell everything.
No, I mean, I think it's just to think about how an experiment like this, because of course these are, these are also experiments that are happening, and how they might be translated into other contexts where these questions are coming up.
But also, if it's not always easy, there are always huge discussion among us, the artistic team, and also the management. It's not always easy. Like there are many times we had a huge discussion, a huge debate, that how to do it. But we always get back to the first thing we say, that remember we invited you to work on this, and then you already said yes, and then there are only 2 options: take it or please take it. So yeah, it works.
Take it or please take it is a good way to go. Just Sumona has work is below, so you can see her work. It's a very interesting work which creates a mood. So it will be interesting and some response to that video was for you actually. That for a kind of a sense of a mood that a space like this creates.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing your experiences with Documenta and with Lumbung. Thank you, Jeebesh. Thank you, Divya. So yeah, I've been involved as a part of this project that Khoj has taken up for the last 4 years now. We were one of the initial groups of grantees. And through this whole process of 14 projects coming together, couple of questions kept reoccurring or recurring. So one was this idea when we would meet, within the framework of development practices, right? Like, how do we talk about, how do we define, or what are the parameters for lumbung artists or social practice, or however we want to talk about it? There are many questions that come up. How long should the project be? When should you leave the community? What is the role of the artist? Who has power? Who doesn't? What is the role of the people the artist is working with? And are these parameters that we have to keep thinking about to really, talk about the efficacy or the traces that are left behind, or the impact, if you want to use the word? And we kept obviously going through these words as well and using them and chucking them out the window. So that's one question I think that we all grapple with, that are there any parameters that we arrive at together? And those 7 failures seem like I don't know whether that was a way of values that we sort of, arrive at together in terms of, when we're talking about social practice, how do we critique, discuss, build upon each other's practice? That was one question. I think it ties to what also you were saying about who is a lumbung artist. So we kept having these discussions, and especially this word impact, we kept trying to throw it out of the window and would keep coming back in, and we kept trying to push it away. But we needed something to hold ourselves accountable, maybe, or accountability was another word that came up. The second phase was when we started thinking about this exhibition, or it wasn't an exhibition initially. The idea was how do we share what happens at the end of it, and eventually it took the format of an exhibition. And in one of your talks, you talk about, during Documenta, you spoke about make friendship, not art. I think that was something that came about. Make friend, not art. And so again, how does that inform this process of bringing it together? Is one thing I wanted to pick your brains about as well. So
thank you also for mentioning this. And also, but earlier you also mentioned about power. The thing is that we don't really see that being the artistic director of Documenta is having power, because we didn't have a pre-power syndrome, and then during Documenta 15 we didn't have in power syndrome, so that's why we don't have a post-power syndrome after that. So about making that's the reason why we like to make friends. It's not make friends, later art. First thing first, make friends, and then art comes later, because we believe that when I meet someone, I don't want to validate it, that what do you do in your life. So asking a very basic question that how are you? It's not about how is your artwork. So it's not that building trust, how to hook each other. Like I remember when I already heard many times before about Raqs and Jeebesh and Monica and Sudab, and then we met in Taipei in 2009, early in 2019, 19, and then that's how we hook each other. We hook each other in a bar that. We have a different. We have another story about that, and and because of I didn't, and then we didn't really discuss what we're doing, what's the reason why we are in Taipei, and then what event that we are going to do. But we just really questioning casual things about human. I mean, we're human. So we're not artificial intelligence that are programmed to asking only to validate. So this is also how it works. That making friends is very important, and there is actually a working group in the process of Documenta 15 called Where is the Art, and it's the most hilarious working group because like ruangrupa now, if you go to Indonesia, you will still meet some people will tell you that who is this guy ruangrupa? I mean, what are they doing? Is it art? And then but we enjoy this question by keep doing what we believe that this is the way we sustain, by sharing resources. And art and cultural practices is one of a platform among many other platforms. So if comes to the question of accountability, it's also the question of infrastructure. And when it comes to the question of infrastructure, one thing for sure that also we believe that Documenta is art and cultural platform. They also open to any experimentation, open to any creativity to develop something. They are not like corporations that are really monetizing everything. Of course, as I always mention, it's not always easy, but we made it with many dynamic along the way. And it's the azan. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. The about the accountability. It's always. I think it's not only in Documenta 15. It's always everywhere when you do things, especially if it comes to a wider audience with a long history of what you're doing. There is always these things come up about the accountability, and then who are the ones who actually say that this is accountable, this is not. The thing is that people keep coming as an audience. There are around 780,000 visitors.
800,000.
800, yeah, around 800,000. That for us, that they are the ones who suppose they are the ones who supposed to have the capability to say that it's accountable or not. Yeah.
So we have a party office there. Would you like to come in and explore a little bit about the lumbung artist before we take some questions? How do you define the lumbung artist? Because I give it the context because I was fortunately, unfortunately engaging with some MFA students for over a period of 3 months, and genius artists they understand completely. Yeah, like they grew up like childhood say clear arrow of time is clear, but lumbung artist becomes a big confusion because suddenly an art historical discourse is disturbed by a category which coming from an agrarian anyways creates a problem for, and then it comes and then says harvest and then a granary. But the lumbung artist as a figure, I think is going to haunt the making of art practice. So that double haunting, where the artist is haunted as well as the idea of the artist is haunted. So it will be interesting how you see the lumbung artist, because you met so many and you were yourself very, very combative and well-defined lumbung artists. So.
Okay. I think it's very interesting because once Documenta actually got over, one of the questions that everybody had in mind, so are we uninviting Documenta from the lumbung now? Because it didn't really meet the values of it. But I mean, I think lumbung artist is somebody who's invited for the process and then who then further invites people. Like I think we worked with more than 150 people. And because our practice is not necessarily based within Delhi, it's obviously based and located within politics of Ambedkar. And those one would say are based out of India, but not necessarily, because we think that Ambedkar politics are really important internationally as well. But then also the question of how they are done also has to be in a contemporary context. We can't live with the same form of practices what we imagine an Ambedkarite practice is. So there were many questions. They're like, why are you throwing a party? Now, why are you talking pro-BDSM? It was really interesting because people in Delhi were like, oh, you were doing all this anti-caste work and now you are saying pro-BDSM just because you are in Germany now. You're in Germany now. And it's really interesting because that for us was actually a take on the politics that we were suddenly made to be Germans in 2 days. We had to learn what the German cultural context was just because of the whole anti-Semitic debate, etc., that happened. So because in Germany you can't be pro-BDS, you can't be pro-Palestine. In fact, you need to be pro-Israel. Not even just be okay with Israel, you need to be pro-Israel.
So for us, saying pro BDSM was a take on saying pro BDS. And all our parties also said pro BDSM only, which kind of internally we all knew, but otherwise people didn't know what it was. But so I think as a lumbung artist, it's also kind of recognizing everything like other artists. And I think what Mirwan said about the mini majlis really helped, because on the ground also, because the artists knew each other, we kind of stood for each other. And it was not, and the artists didn't actually even physically needed to be present in castle for other artists to take care of that artist's work.
One of the, in this case, is a friend from India, Surapatke. So he didn't make it to be in castle because there's a problem with his visa. So he was in London, and then he didn't make it to be in castle for 100 days. But he was visiting for research twice. Yeah.
But he spoke to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. He spoke to all of us.
But yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And also, like, I think it's also just this kind of international invitation which also made transparent so many border politics, because all the artists were being treated differently, not only obviously by the German government and Documenta itself as a state actor, because all of its board is primarily politicians, German politicians, like even ruangrupa members, and how different people, even within Indian context, but also just how all the artists were treated became transparent in terms of some people not getting whatever visas, some people then arguing. One of the first arguments that we actually brought up to Documenta as a collective through a mini Akbar Majlis was that we asked them that they need to pay for COVID tests, because not everybody was supposed to do COVID tests. Only certain countries were supposed to do COVID tests to be able to enter Germany. So a lot of these structures kind of became transparent through these different lumbung networks, which are kind of capitalist, which are kind of border nationalist structures. And I think just thinking of framing of Documenta 15 as just an art thing, or reading it only as an art thing, is not enough. And I think it's really important to see all of these different things that happen. And all the artists spoke about it. But obviously, I feel that even within like our context, people still think of it as an art, or like we have to respond to it as an art experience. But Documenta 15 was much more than just that. And you want to add something?
Yeah, I was also thinking about this in relation to what Vidya was asking about what is the format of the exhibition then. And for me, it really felt it was exhibition as gathering, as Mirwan was saying, that it was the opening was not just a coming together, but it was a form of a reunion, in fact. And throughout the process, I kept analyzing it curatorially, the pre-process, and I felt so much of the curatorial work was in creating structures that encouraged or even pushed us to have this conversation. Thinking about mini majlises, thinking about working groups, thinking about sitting with money in between us. What do? You have to do something. There's no way out of it. And that was really beautiful. That was really experimental in also thinking of how these transcontinental conversations happen, are incited, but are also made sustainable in some way, or made to be sustained in some way. And then once we were there, the politics of Germany, that kind of cultural explosion that took place in Germany just catalyzed our interactions. We were forced to, our individual politics were forced to come to the fore in these kind of gatherings and writing statements. And it just accelerated this idea of finding trust, of finding support, of finding some kind of understanding in each other, as the lumbung, as kind of some kind of cohesion while also understanding that we have very different viewpoints. Thinking also about this idea of accountability, and in relation to friends, I think that it's so important to develop friendships within the arts that can actually tell you that something is messed up in the practice, because that process takes a lot of energy. It's not something that can be done by an outsider or somebody who doesn't have an investment in your work. And I feel like that was something that was being developed over the months, and we would ask each other very difficult questions. We would ask ruangrupa very difficult questions, and that was the process that was being built up. And that's why I think there is a very strong feeling that lumbung continues in multiple ways, in multiple threads, in a dispersed kind of rhizomatic manner. In many places else, in many elsewheres, yeah.
No, one thing before we take questions, this contemporary art, like I would agree and disagree with you, Vidisha. Contemporary art is the site where the most difficult question about the world can be articulated, and I think this documenter shows us. Okui's document also showed it, that this is a site, this is not a display site of certain way of being working in the world. It's also a site where some kind of intersection happens with all kinds of ways between all subjectivities, infrastructures, everything. Document is a 50 million euro project, and it's something that it shows that 50 million euro is lot of money. One, like I keep on saying, one jet is 150 million euro. And so if you compare it, 50 million is very little money. You don't buy one jet, you buy a squadron. So it comes to 1.5 billion. And in India, we know how scales goes. The question is 50 million is a very little money compared to the scale of the economy of where 1 trillion, I think, like 100 trillion economies in the world. And that 50 million could be rethought completely. So I think what they managed is contemporary art becomes that site where you can rethink very fundamental question about the world. What is a resource? What is an infrastructure? What is an invitation? And this is something that our societies everywhere in the world needs this re-article. So it's important, but the question should not stay there. The question should outflow. That's now we can have, Andan is here and we can carry on. So please ask your question, make it short so that he can pick up few, and he has to take back questions to Indonesia, so Jakarta and Marka, many places. So please feel free to open. Here is a mic, there's mic around.
What kind of economic model did you have to work through while you were reorganizing the way that you were inviting people? And I'm very curious about the funding and the distribution of resources when you made this move to change the way that you were inviting artists and cultural practitioners, and really changing the infrastructural sort of space and resources as well. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, thank you also for this question, because we wanted to experiment a new economic models in art and cultural practices, because we believe that, and also at the same time, as I said before, that we don't do a classical curating, which is we don't commission works. We don't commission works. We don't prepare money, give to the artist or collective, and then asking them to make works, and then they give it to us, and then sold. And it's not the way it works. But instead of doing this classical thing, that we converse. We don't commission. So, for example, that. If there are artists or collective, they've been doing their practice, and then they want to continue it, and then they want to level it up in the context of Documenta 15. So we give a freedom for them to bring these practices to Documenta 15. And the second thing is that we have what we call as a lumbung gallery. Lumbung gallery is is a way of experimenting this economic model where the works are sold. If there are works are sold, and then 70% goes to the artist, and then 30% goes to the lumbung community. So we have a lumbung pot. We have a lumbung pot where these 30% are put in there, and then it's now being discussed that where those 30% will be used for. That's also the reason why we always say that it will be continued. It will be continued with this experimentation, with this new way of, with this experimentation of economic models. Yeah, I hope it answers. Yeah.
I had a very enlightened, funny conversation with a printer in Kassel. They got gifted a offset machine, and they kept it in Documenta Halle, where artists would experiment and produce books. So he was saying that somebody liked it and said, take papers, a gifted paper. So he went to collect the paper, and he realized that it's a huge godown of paper, and he needed 3 trucks to run the paper. So he had to find a truck to get the paper. But even if you get the paper, where will he keep it there? Because there is no place in Documenta Halle in the exhibition space to keep tons of paper. So it was a very intriguing way in which you have to create a trust economy that even the gift has to survive a time. A gift to reach the artist over a period of 100 years has to survive through various very fragile relationships. And even one onlooker who was standing there and the machine was not working came and fixed it, said, I've been working on offset machine for 30 years and it's very nice to see artists working. So this relationship is what I think ties, that some duration don't survive just because you say it's duration. Duration survives because people have a urge to keep the duration running, and that's I think very critical. That I think a critical component of the lumbung artist, that they have that they have to keep themselves alive. And that's the different from, in Nilanjan we were discussing, that's different from live. Live performance, live thing. This is keeping yourself alive for 100 years, alive in the fullest sense, to build these fragile linkages continuously. And I think that's the, remarkable achievement that I sensed there in that place. And that's something that will take long years to unravel and think through, because I think a lot of people working in this area understands it, but it's not been articulated discursively, because genius artist always occupies more space, I guess.
And also, I want to add about the question of the economic model. And then we also give a freedom to artists or collective if they want to share their 30% to the lumbung pot, it's good. But if also they don't want to, because they want to, those 30% are more important to continue their collective, or they are in need to how to say, they need those 30% in their own context. We're also fine with that, and then we don't think that, oh, you are greedy, that's why you don't want to give us. So because we also understand that every collective or every artist are also struggling. So if you want to share, it's fine to the pot, but if you don't, also it's fine. So we give those freedoms to anyone who their works are sold. Yeah.
Even in the context of mini majlises, we were all given a certain amount of money, each collective. No, there was a large amount of money which was in the mini majlis, and we had to collectively decide what do we do with this money. And in fact, even right now in Castle, some spaces that the artist occupied have now been kind of occupied by the local collectives as cultural spaces. And I think that's also important. And I think, at least like for us, because we previously have not taken any money from anybody in India before, and like I would say that for us, for 2 years, let's say Party Office's budget was around 5,000 euros, and that's how we run our grants and stuff. For us, we became capable of actually making publications from those grants that we had previously given, which then get recirculated. So now when we sell the publication, the amount we make from the publication goes into the future grant. So which then kind of creates a system that you don't again have to rely upon private sources, because as I mean, as Party Office, it was even founded for a certain political agency that you don't see in the arts in India. And then we are able to sustain and continue that kind of political agency that we want.
But like one should hack into all kinds of funding. So one should have the spirit of hackers. So there should be nothing should be kept unhacked. So any question, anyone? Oh, there.
Thank you very much for your work. Followed it very closely. In following on from the discussion about sustained relational practices, you said making friends, not art. Is making friends also art?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, but it's intangible. Yeah, it's intangible. It's intangible and it can be forever. And it's not. It's not only friendship is forever, and then it cannot be. It cannot be boxed. It cannot be boxed in any gallery or in the hand of collectors. So it's also artworks. It's also artworks, but intangible, and we feel it. I agree with this. That's the reason why that making friends later art, because when you make friends, you already make art.
Yeah, I think that was my main takeaway from Lumbung. That's what you were challenging us with. Thank you.
There is a very interesting footnote in this book, Niladri Bhattacharya's Agrarian, what is the Great Agrarian, what is the book called? Great Agrarian. Anyway, it's a beautiful book on the history of agrarian cultivation in Punjab for 100 years. There's a beautiful footnote on this idea of friendship, which is the colonial administrator is very wary of the natives' friendship because it's based on loyalty, and they think the club friendship is based on reason. And I think this documenta produced this split after that is an annotation, I think in 1920, that footnote. This documenta after 100 years produced the same tension in the way the idea of reasonable thinking and kind of an affectively closed living got channelized as a debate. So it will be interesting to revisit those older footnotes of histories. So is a question there somewhere? There was a Santosh.
This is to do with this concept that you are deploying. They are largely, I assume, agrarian concepts. It has a larger communal dimension than individual meanings. So I see two issues in that. One is that it can sometimes get into some kind of a generic romanticization of the agrarian as the answer to the contemporary, the capitalist culture. So that, especially in the context of a place like India, that can be a great concern in the sense that very often reformers coming from the below even ask people to move out of the agrarian in order to challenge the system and so on and so forth. So the question is not about the problem of using the agrarian concepts. The question is about what are the kind of translations that you do with these concepts, in order to make it dynamic, in order to make it corresponding to the complexities of the contemporary. What are the kinds of negotiations and multiple forms of translation undergoes in order to make these concepts dynamic and potent in the complexities of the world?
Yeah, actually, it's not only based on the agricultural society, but also as we Indonesian, we come from a maritime culture. We are the archipelago with 17,520 something islands. So we also learn a lot, not only from the agrarian society, but also from the maritime society. They practice this, which we don't want to be also essentialist by taking them, but because also we're not romanticize, we consider that we do not romanticize it because we live with it. It's part of our body. It's embodied with us. It's embodied. It's embodied with us, and also that how do we translate it? That we actually see four steps in this process, which are planting, nurturing, harvesting, and then sharing. So that's how we translate it. So the whole process is actually representing all those four steps, and then exhibiting during these 100 days is actually a step of harvesting. Harvesting that not only the planting, nurturing, and also the sharing during the 100 days is a sharing, and then it's actually the fourth steps after 3 steps before that not only took times during the process of Documenta 15 because even before that, all these collective and artists they've been doing this, they've been planting, they've been nurturing their practice, and then they've been harvesting, and then it's how we share it during these 100 days. And after that, we believe that keep on sharing it as a practice, as an experience, as a stories are the possibilities to continue this. That's how we translate this. And it's not only based on the agriculture, but also in the maritime, which is sailing, and coming to port and then sailing again, and then it never stops. Yeah.
Also, I think there was a food program by the Indonesian government, which was called Lumbung as well, I think in 2020, and I think that was, but also it was quite criticized. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Lumbung it's actually that's the reason why that we use lumbung is because lumbung is a word which is used not only by, it's also used by the government as part of their official programs, and then we see that somehow some programs are in, like in 1986. The president was granted an award by the Food and Agricultural Organization because he was considered succeed in implementing the food sovereignty, but it's in a government level. And then we see the realities. Sometimes it doesn't really work, but we see that this practice, not only a term but also this practice, we use it. And then in Indonesia, it's always when you mention lumbung, it always comes to people's mind as a physical structure, but then we use it and then add some values in there, and then we use it not only as a physical structure but also as I mentioned, is a software that can be installed in any platform. Yeah.
I think Santosh, it's also, I think lumbung can be used as not as a replacing or claiming another majoritarian space, but opening up this space of where multiple ways in which different histories can come with their own imaginary of what an artist can be. Like in India, I'm sure in a few years' time we will have the Mahad artist who will claim a different vantage point to enter the prohibitory environment of culture. So there will be, I think it will, my sense from the conversation, I could sense that it opened up that space. The space, the naming of the artist, the naming of the claim to the artist is something that has to be now opened up. And it is not frozen in the art historical terms. Like 2002 Documenta opened the historical gaps. The fissures were completely laid bare. Like where is this historical narrative coming from? I think this one makes the claim of the artist itself. Who is this artist? And anybody can, there are many ways in this claim would be made. And I think the teaching of art will go to a radical rethinking. Because these are going to land up in universities, people are going to make claims that I am this kind of artist, I am that kind of artist. And this multiple histories will collide more dynamically now. I have this feeling from the visit and conversations with the artists. Any other?
Yeah, I think it takes it beyond pedagogy, which we have. No, I was just adding that I think it because at some point we've been so invested in pedagogy within as an arts practice. I think it takes it beyond that because it talks about there's a certain kind of trust that is engaged when it comes to what we were collectively doing or what we had collectively been invested in through the curatorial.
Students? Yeah.
Hi. Can you just put light on the autonomous nature of it? I think you kind of mentioned it before, but can you talk about the autonomy of the structure that you created? Autonomy.
Yeah. So when it goes to this term, and then as we mentioned before, that we give a freedom to the artist and the collective to develop their own practice to Documenta 15. We don't commission new works, for example. That's how actually we define the autonomy of the artist and the collective and then they have their own autonomy to because we mentioned before that you can extend the invitation. We invite you, and then you can extend in the invitation, and then we don't control that who they are inviting with, who they invite. So like many people come, and then like we don't know them all. Like how do we know that they are part of this Documenta 15 when they have the badge, or we see them engage like in a party or in a programs, and then that's how also that's how we define actually the autonomy, that we don't control, because controlling is not our thing. We're not government, they're controlling. Yeah.
And are there another political challenges apart, like outside of the system that you're facing?
The political challenges.
Yeah, I mean social political challenges. If there are any.
Yeah, of course there are many political challenges that we face during the process, because we don't want to call it as a clash of civilization. We call it as a clash of system, because in this question always we have since the beginning, even before that. I was in somewhere in Western Europe, give a lecture in a university, and then I don't need to mention the university, and then there was a question asking me that do you realize that people are afraid of you because you bring this to Europe? And then we said, oh, this is funny, because why people are afraid? For years and years and years, people from the Europe came to us, to Indonesia, as colonizer, as investment, as anything. But we're never afraid of. We fought against colonizer. We're never afraid of. But then we come with 9 of us came with this idea, and then people are afraid of. It's very funny. And then someone said that, oh, maybe they are afraid because they don't understand. And then I said that, yeah, it takes time, and it's never too late to share. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. So I'm just wondering, thinking out loud again. So when you were saying that you have created this invitational extension, right? That you kind of invite some artists and then they can invite other people who they are associated with, or you were talking about these ecologies, right? So I was just wondering, and again, might be very wrong as well, but so when you're talking about this creates this kind of inclusive space, right? That you bring this, you create this possibility or this structure which kind of enables a certain inclusion. Do you also think that through this inclusion, it also creates certain exclusions? Because, I mean, this is something which I was thinking about because when we are thinking that, certain artists are being invited and then certain artists are inviting their ecologies, right? Or their circles. So, I mean, just thinking that does it do that as well?
We don't really actually use the binary opposition in this. I mean, inclusion, exclusion. But we use the adjustment. I mean, there are 100 days, and there are artists and collectives we invite, and then we said earlier that you can please extend this invitation, and then it's not about limitation, but it's always about adjustment. Like for example, party office, they invite they extend invitation to the people they actually part. Yeah, it's always the term inclusion and exclusion is always come up if we go with the term circle. So, and also circle, it's actually doesn't really apply in this thing, because if you are in circle and then circling, you are in a and then sometimes by the end of the day you are in a full of circle, but then we don't see it as a really circle. We don't really see it as a circle, and then that's the reason why we don't really see it as a. It's not a matter of inclusion and exclusion, because and it's not also about limitation. It's not also about limitation, but it's adjustment. Just like we do Photoshop, you need to adjust the color to gain a better picture, and then to get a picture that what do you want to do, what do you want to have, what do you want to say, and then what do you want to share. Yeah.
Basically, what they have set up a protocol. That protocol, if given time and money, can have the whole world in it. So that's the logic of the protocol. So inclusion and exclusion don't apply here in the way it would apply in other form. The protocol logic is such. So if they document that 15 could run its course, maybe the whole of the world unfolded intent. Technically, it should happen like that. Well, with many transformations, but it will happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think to also think that inclusions are not always visible in this kind of invitation format. Ruangrupa really encouraged all of us to spend a large part of our budget in our local ecosystems. They said, if you don't want to get anything in the exhibition, don't get it. So the way that these resources proliferate, it's not necessarily that those who are invited physically are the only ones who are included, or those who are seen over there are the only ones included, but these resources spread over and over through these networks.
And also the networks, the word networks, we don't really use the networks because, but we are more interesting to the word ecosystem. Why? Because networks, there are two words in there, net and works. And then if it doesn't work, it's only net. Yeah.
Only net. There was a...
Yeah, just wanted to share something that what I find the most interesting in the way you did the whole Documenta 15 is the fact that usually in any art, cultural context, art, the discourse centers around art. And what you did is that you shifted the center of that discourse from art to life, and everything connected to life. Friendships, sharing, everything that makes life much more interesting and happy and, to live. Rather than, so this shift of the discursive center from art to life is, for me, the really like a very critical move that happened. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. That's it.
Don't ask any question, we wind up, because I have... Do we wind up, or we ask any final question? Response? Nothing? No. Because this, like my closing comment is that, there is a question there.
It's more like a hopeless cry, to be very honest, because the conversation around making friendships instead of making art still happens against the idea that in the conversation of that friendships even today are highly inaccessible, and that so many of us still exist precisely in loneliness. And I just want to think about what kind of art can be made in loneliness, if there are any thoughts about that how does one navigate that situation really? If I made any sense, yeah.
Like, if I'm not able to make friends, do I have a space in a rhetoric of friendship? if the context which values so much friendship, then how do I produce? How do I come if I can't make friend? I'm lonely, and is there validity to the art that I am producing?
Actually, what we believe that anyone in this world can make a friends. I mean, any one of us cannot. I mean, everything we do in this life, we cannot do it alone. Like it always needs more than one person, more than ourselves. Singularity never singularity never has a future. It's always plurality always have future. This is very interesting. Like in Arabic, if some of you understand about the Arabic grammar, so one is still singular, but two is still not plural. So they call it musanna. Musanna if it's only two. Three up to it's counted as a plural if it's three more than two. So this is also very interesting to see that what we believe in lumbung is that we are already suffer with the individualism. I mean, we in all of these things happening, all of the suffer of human being is always because only the manifestation of individuals. And then why don't we see that? Why don't we see that we can do this if we do it in plurality, not only in singularity? Yeah. So and we believe that anyone can make friends. It's because it's impossible we live with our own life. So for us, if the question is what if someone cannot make friends, how do they make works? If you make works and then you need someone to appreciate it, and then that's how you make friends. You need someone to appreciate it, and then you need someone to see it, and then that's how his friendship trust is made, both the creator and the audience. Yeah.
But at one level, this is a very anti-20th century reading of art, because to be opposed to the world, to project yourself as a provocator who can actually deal with the life of loneliness because being rejected is not a problem, was the vocation of the art, the calling of the artist. So it's interesting, we have to carry that history, and now you have added a new history. So I think the gap between them, it will be good to be an art student now, I guess. It's too late for me, I guess, but yeah, so you can invite them to hang out in your house to understand this strange oscillating movement between the yearning to be opposed, but yet creating friends through it. So I think on that note we can end, and we can have a party below because there is a performance going on. And we hope to have more of these discussions. And I think this one thing about this documentary is it is underwritten intellectually. It is still not written itself, and this is something that I think will be a challenge, because there is a kind of a blank check, discursive blank check, which I call moving around, which is being filled up by dominant discursive methods, dominant forms of producing culture, producing knowledge about culture. So it will be important for everyone to participate in different ways to rethink this movement, rather than let it go by and appear through other circuits, which you are trying to displace anyway. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anand, for coming to our city and enjoying yourself. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Videsh and Sona, for dropping.
And also thank you for all the operators and also the Puja and Nilanjan team. Thank you so much.